I was reborn on the night before I was killed by my husband. Betrayus. Revenge via. I booked a cruise ship. Let's go out to sea tomorrow to celebrate our 3rd anniversary. Shall we? Looking at his sincere and affectionate appearance, I nodded and agreed. Sure. See you then. In my previous life, I was tricked onto the ship by him and then he pushed me into the sea with his own hands. And I drowned. I will always remember the feeling of powerlessness when I was calling for help in the sea but kept sinking deeper. Since I've been given a chance to be reborn, this time I must make this man pay the price he deserves. I agreed to meet him. But when the time came, I went home alone. When I opened the door, I found that the lights in the house were on. My heart tightened. At this time, Betrayus should clearly be on the cruise ship. How could there be someone at home? Suppressing my rapid heartbeat, I quietly entered the house. A woman's carcass voice came from our bedroom. Honey, come back quickly after you deal with her. I've prepared a surprise for you tonight. From now on, no one will be able to stop us from being together. Revenge via's money will finally become ours. You've made me suffer a lot of grievances these past few years. You have to compensate me well in the future. Fortunately, having fulfilledly, our good days are coming soon. It's not too late yet. I love you. Betrayus. From now on, you finally belong only to me. Traitor Ine. After saying that, she giggled to herself, and it sounded particularly eerie in the dark night. I held my breath, and my mind went blank. I was all too familiar with this voice. It was my best friend of 10 years. Traitor Ine. I had originally thought that my death was solely Betrayus' doing. But I never expected that I was caught in a trap set by the 2 people closest to me. Although I was angry, my remaining rationality still reminded me not to alert the enemy. I carefully backed out of the house and went to the company. As I was approaching the company, Betrayus kept calling me one after another. I muted my phone and didn't answer. Finally, having fulfilled my sigh, after he called nearly 20 times, he gave up. The next morning, I estimated the time and called him back. Revenge via. What do you mean? You left me alone in the middle of the sea last night to be blown by the sea breeze all night. Do you know what day it was yesterday? He kept questioning me as if I were really a bad person. I softened my voice and apologized to him. Husband, I'm so sorry. I received a notice of a business trip at the end of work yesterday. I have to go on a business trip for 2 weeks. Because it was too urgent, I couldn't answer your call. It was already very late when I got to the hotel. So I can only tell you now. After hearing my reply, his voice turned cold and he threw out a sentence. I'm really disappointed in you. Then he hung up the phone with a snap. I snorted coldly. He must be disappointed that the good days he had been dreaming of were dashed by me. Just after I hung up his call, my cousin, Seducer Ine, called me. Sis, my newly found job is just near your house. My previous lease has expired, and I'm a bit short of money at the moment. Could you take me in for the next few months? My cousin is no easy person. A few years ago, she came to this city to attend university. I took Betrayus and treated her to a meal. I admit that although Betrayus has a bad character, his face is indeed quite handsome. I still remember vividly the way Seducer Ine's eyes almost popped out when she saw him at that time. Moreover, during the meal, she kept doing some green tea acts, and I saw through her intentions at a glance. Since then, I've been on guard against her and didn't let her get Betrayus' contact information. I thought that was the end of it. But unexpectedly, she still hasn't given up her ill intentions. Since she came to me on her own, I can just provide her with an opportunity. So I readily agreed, told her the unlocking password of the house, and also informed her that I would be on a business trip for 2 weeks and that currently, only Betrayus was at home. After learning this news, I could even hear her suppressed excitement through the phone. Seducer Ine is young and beautiful and has her own means. Betrayus is not as affectionate as he pretends to be in front of me. Not surprisingly, the green hat on my head is about to get even greener. I contacted a private detective to help me keep an eye on the 3 of them. As expected, in just 2 days, Betrayus fell into Seducer Ine's tender embrace. According to the information provided by the detective, the two of them only went out once at night for Betrayas to pick up a package and throw out the trash. There were also several used condoms in the trash bag. He took a few pictures and sent them to me. I suppressed my nausea and asked him to keep watching. I deliberately didn't call to disturb them these 2 days. In the evening, I sent a message to Trader Ine, saying that I couldn't get in touch with Betrayas and needed her to go to my house to find my passport and send it to me. I don't know what Betrayas told her these days, but she obediently stayed at home quietly and didn't go to find him. At this time today, the two people at home must be being affectionate with each other. If I asked Trader Ine to go there now, she will definitely run into them. She quickly replied to me, okay. Although I know she has long memorized the password of my house by heart, to make the act complete. I sent her the password and told her the approximate location of the passport. It takes at most 20 minutes to drive from where Trader Ine lives to my house. But now almost an hour has passed. And she still hasn't given me any feedback. It seems that the battle over there should be quite intense. 20 minutes later, the detective sent me a video. They installed a camera at my doorstep. I saw Trader Ine directly grabbing the hair of a woman in thin clothes and dragging her into the corridor, shouting, "Betrayas. You have to tell me clearly today who this woman is." Then she forcefully pushed Seducer Ine to the ground. "Do you have no shame? Throwing yourself at a married man when you're so young. Don't you know he's married? You like showing off, right? I'll let you show off enough today." As she said that, she was about to pull off Seducer Ine's camisolo. Seducer Ine is never a simple little lamb to be slaughtered. Although she is thin, she has always persisted in fitness. When Trader Ine tried to pull at her clothes, Seducer Ine swung a hard slap at her face. This slapped Trader Ine senseless, and she stood there stunned. "Who are you, Auntie? He's not your husband. Why are you getting so excited? You're crazy." As she said that, she pulled at her clothes that had slipped halfway down from the ground and stood up leaning against the wall. Betrayas finally showed up at this time. He pulled Seducer Ine over and protected her behind him. Seeing this, Trader Ine was so angry that she didn't know where to direct her anger. She shouted, "Betrayas. You have to explain to me what's going on today." Seducer Ine gave her a disdainful walk and directly hugged Betrayas in front of her. "Brother Betrayas. Who on earth is this woman? Look, she's hurt me. Stay away from him." Trader Ine rushed at Seducer Ine like a madwoman, trying to pull her away. But Betrayas pulled her away even faster. "Trader Ine. Calm down." "How can I calm down? Revenge via alone is already enough to annoy me. And now there's another one? Betrayas. You clearly said before that you only loved me. How can you sleep with other women? How can you be worthy of me?" Hearing this, Seducer Ine laughed out loud. "Huh. I thought you were standing on some moral high ground to accuse me. It turns out you're just like me. Anti. Get it straight. You're just a mistress who can't be seen in the light. Just like me. Don't go crazy and be an eyesore here. In this world, the only person who can be angry at me because of brother Betrayas is my sister. Revenge via. You're not qualified." Trader Ine was half dead with anger from her words, and didn't care about anything else. She grabbed something nearby and pounced on Seducer Ine. The two of them quickly got into a fight. I took out my phone and called the police, saying that there was a fight near my home. The police arrived soon and took the three of them to the police station together. I could finally take a break for a while. Early the next morning, I secretly found a lawyer to consult. I jointly invested in a company with Trader Ine 5 years ago in the name of my husband and wife relationship with Betrayas. Because I trusted her, I didn't participate in the operation and just invested money. Except for the first year. It has been losing money since then. But not much. So I didn't pay too much attention. But judging from the current situation, I should take a good look into the tricks involved. I didn't know until I investigated. And I was shocked. The industry we invested in has been in the limelight in recent years. It has actually been making a profit in recent years. It's just that the company has kept to sets of accounts. The set shown to me and the tax bureau is the one showing losses. In addition, The company account has made hundreds of transfers to her and Betray's personal accounts, with an amount exceeding 1 million. There are countless cases of issuing fake indicas and inflating costs. I sorted out all the materials and evidence and kept them on file. Then I pretended to still be on a business trip and stayed in the hotel for a few days. A week later, seeing that the timing was almost right, I carried my luggage and went home. Seducer Renee had asked me when I would be back before, and I told her. So when I came back today, everything at home was normal, and there was nothing eye-catching happening. It was night when I got home. Betrayus wasn't there, and Seducer Renee was sitting cross-legged on the sofa watching TV alone. When she saw me, a flattering smile immediately bloomed on her face. "Sis, you're finally back. You don't know how bored I've been these days when you were away." I gave her a meaningful look. "Didn't your brother-in-law stay with you at home?" She was taken aback for a moment, but her expression quickly returned to normal. "Brother-in-law isn't as good as you. Basically. Except when he comes back to sleep at night. I rarely see him. I've been at your house for so long. And we've only run into each other once. I think. Is that so?" "Yeah, hadn't fulfilled my obsession." "Yeah." She nodded firmly. I pulled her to sit down, and my expression was a bit complicated. She was very observant and immediately noticed. "Sis. What's going on? Has something happened?" I deliberately made a hesitant look. "Sis, any need me? Tell me. I'm your sister. There's nothing you can't tell me." I nodded and leaned against the sofa and started crying. "Seducer Renee. I'm sick." How could that be? What kind of illness is it?" I shook my head and handed her the prepared medical record form. "It's cancer. The doctor said I only have at most half a year left. You know, I don't have children with Betrayus. And my parents passed away a long time ago." As I spoke, I looked around the house and then murmured reluctantly. "In this world, the person I can't bear to leave the most is Betrayus. After I'm gone, he will be the first in line to inherit my estate. It's okay to give it to him. But just thinking that after I die, he will marry another woman. And all this, my house, my car, and my money will belong to another woman. It makes me feel so bad." Seducer Renee's eyes sparkled at what I said, and I caught a clear glimpse of the calculating expression on her face. Seizing the opportunity, I stopped crying and took her hand. "Let's go out for dinner together tonight. I've made an appointment with my best friend Trader Renee, and Betrayus will also be there. I don't have much time left, and I want to spend more time with my friends and family. It just so happens that you can get to know each other and take care of each other in the future," I invited. As I expected, upon hearing that there were to other people, she nodded without even thinking. Afraid that I would go back on my word and not take her with me. When Seducer and I arrived at the appointed restaurant, Betrayus and Trader Renee were already there. From a distance, Trader Renee looked in a bad mood, and Betrayus was anxiously saying something to her. He noticed me quickly and immediately put on a different expression as he came towards me. "Wife, you've had a tough business trip. I originally said I'd pick you up at the airport, but something unexpected came up and held me up. I came straight here after work." I calmly removed his hand from my shoulder. "It's okay. Work is important." I brought Seducer and I along without telling them in advance. So when everyone was seated, the expressions on their faces were truly a sight to behold. Trader Renee was the most uncomfortable. After the dishes were served, we all buried our heads in eating, each with our own ulterior motives. I took out the medical record from my bag again. Betrayus reached out and took it, asking, "What's this?" "I have cancer." His hand froze in mine. Trader Renee looked up at me in disbelief. Betrayus came to his senses, stood up suddenly, having fulfilled my obsession, and knelt beside me, hugging me. "How could this be? How could this be?" He repeated it over and over again. He thought he had hidden his feelings well, but I could still tell that he was desperately trying to hide his joy. "It's impossible. Impossible. Wife. Let's go to the hospital. The hospital must have a way to cure you." I pushed him away and shook my head. "There's no way. I've already consulted about it. I'm telling you today because I've already made up my mind. I won't treat this illness. Anyway, I only have half a year left in my life. I don't want to spend the last half year in the hospital and in sadness. Let it be. Betrayus suddenly burst into tears. I couldn't help but want to applaud him in my heart. His acting skills are worthy of an Oscar. Revenge via. Have you really decided? Traitor Ine asked me. I don't want to spend my last days in the hospital. Betrayus continued to cry so hard that he was out of breath. I pulled him up and handed him a piece of paper. Betrayus. You have to live well on your own in the future. Hearing this, he cried even more sorrowfully. I handed him a napkin. There are so many people in the restaurant. You should go to the bathroom and wash up. Only then did he let go of me and say, I'll go to the bathroom. As soon as he left, Seducer and A immediately got up and chased after him. I'll go to the bathroom too. Watching them head in the same direction, I stared at Seducer and A's back and said in a voice that Traitor and A could hear, It's so nice to be young. Then I turned to Traitor and I and asked, Do you think they're a good match? Huh? Apparently, hadn't the wide sigh. She didn't expect me to ask this question. After I'm gone, Betrayus will be alone. He's still so young that it's impossible for him not to get married again. But just the thought of my house, car, and money all going to another woman makes me feel bad. Thinking about it, I'd rather give them to my cousin. If I want the two of them to be together. What do you think? Revenge via. Are you crazy? Traitor and A looked at me in disbelief and stood up excitedly. Betrayus is your husband. How can you push him onto another woman? Are you out of your mind? Even if you're sick, you can't have such thoughts. That woman and Betrayus are simply not a good match. A woman like her will never be worthy of Betrayus. Her voice was so loud that everyone around us turned to look in our direction. Seeing her reaction, I easily adjusted my sitting posture, leaned back in the chair, and stared at her. Honey, don't you think you're overreacting a bit? She suddenly came to her senses. Feeling a bit embarrassed, she stroked her hair and sat down again. I mean, you shouldn't have such thoughts. He's your husband. And, she was about to persuade me further. But I interrupted her. I can tell that Seducer in A is the type he likes. The way he looked at her just now is something I haven't seen in all these years. But I don't blame him. Everyone likes beautiful and young things. Especially men. Young and pretty women are always irresistible to them. Traitor in A. We have to admit that we really can't compare to a young girl like Seducer in A. Just as I finished speaking, the two of them came back one after the other. Seducer in A's face was crimson. And her hair was a bit disheveled. Betrayus followed behind her. And his shirt clearly had wrinkles. I glanced at Seducer in I and asked knowingly, Why is your face so red? And your lipstick is a bit smudged? She panicked immediately and said shyly, maybe it's too stuffy in here. Yeah. It is quite stuffy. I'm feeling hot too. Betrayus chimed in, echoing her words. After that, Seducer in A gave him an affectionate look, and Traitor in A and I witnessed this scene. Betrayus. Why don't you take Seducer in A home first? Traitor in A and I will chat for a while longer. After all, she's my best friend. And I'm afraid there won't be many more days like this in the future. Huh? Brother-in-law. Let's go back first and give sister some time to spend with her friend. Seducer and I immediately stood up and urged. Betrayus had to pretend to agree reluctantly. Well, then call me when you're done later. And I'll come pick you up. I nodded in agreement, thinking that he was probably trying to prevent me from going back and catching them off guard. This scumbag sure knows how to talk big. Although Traitor in A was extremely reluctant, she didn't have the standing to raise any objections. She could only put on a disgruntled expression and stare intently at the two people walking further and further away. After they were out of sight, I spoke again. I wonder if Seducer in A can seize the opportunity I gave her. Traitor in A's face turned pale instantly when she heard me say this. Revenge via. You're really tough on yourself. I smiled unfairly. I'm just a person nearing the end of my life. I kept an eye on the time and made Traitor in A chat with me for another 2 hours before letting her go. Throughout the whole process, she was absent-minded. constantly sending messages to someone on her phone. But there was no response at all from the other end. After another half an hour, she finally couldn't sit still and made up a random excuse to leave. I stopped her. "You've been drinking. You can't drive." Only then did she realize this problem. I took her car keys. "Wait a moment. I'll ask my friend to pick you up." She looked up at me. "Friend? What friend?" I paused before saying. "Trader N.A. You've been alone for so many years. I've already taken care of Betrayas. But what about you? You're not young anymore. And you should try to fall in love." She quickly waved her hand to refuse. "No. Thanks. I'm used to being alone." I grabbed her wrist. "Give it a try. This guy is a client of mine. His name is Pretender Is. Don't you trust my taste? He's just turned 30 this year. A master's graduate returnee from overseas. He's 180 centimeters tall. And his looks are definitely the type you like. He owns 2 companies and is a typical young and promising man." Just as I finished speaking, Pretender Is had already arrived at the door. Watching her receding figure, I couldn't help but laugh. This game is just beginning. I took out my phone and dialed Betrayas's number. Half an hour later, the car stopped at the door. He helped me into the car and carefully fastened my seat belt. "Revenge via. How are you feeling?" I turned to look at him with a serious expression. "Betrayas. You know me. There aren't many people in this world that I'm attached to now. Besides you, there's only Trader N.A. Trader N.A. is still single. And I'm worried about her. I'm planning to transfer all my shares in the company and I jointly invested with her to her. I think you'll understand me. Right? It's up to you to decide. These are all yours." I nodded. "Actually, I just want her to have more confidence in front of Pretender Is. Pretender Is is so rich and handsome. And there are plenty of young girls flocking to him. If I give her more money to rely on, she'll have a better life." "Pretender Is? Who is Pretender Is?" His eyes looking at me became much more eager. "He's a client that my company worked with before. I introduced the 2 of them. And it seems that they're quite satisfied with each other. Look. Pretender Is just sent me a photo of himself at Trader N.A.'s house. I didn't expect Trader N.A. to be so proactive once she takes a liking to someone." Betrayas's expression suddenly became unreadable. I took the opportunity to exaggerate. "We're all adults. I dealt with Pretender Is. And his character is definitely reliable." He pursed his lips into a straight line and didn't say a single word during the whole drive home. The next morning, the 3 of us sat around the dining table having breakfast. My phone rang several times in a row. I was holding a sandwich in my hand and didn't have time to check it. "Revenge via. You have a message." Betrayas reminded me. I nodded inferiorly. "Oh, it might be something related to work. I have something in my hand. Could you check it for me?" After that, he opened my phone and clicked on WeChat. His face gradually became serious. "Who is it?" He didn't say anything and stared intently at my phone screen as if he wanted to devour it. I raised my voice and asked again. Finally, Hadin Pafelwi. He came to his senses. "Pretender Is. Oh, what did he say?" "He said thank you for introducing him to Trader N.A. They had a great chat last night and hit it off. They're even planning to go on a trip to Japan together next month and will invite you to have wedding candies when they come back." I raised my eyebrows. These 2 are really hitting it off. Their relationship is progressing so fast. I should have introduced them to each other earlier. "What? Sister? You introduced a boyfriend to Trader N.A.?" Seducer and I interrupted. "Yeah. There happened to be such an excellent guy around. I just thought of introducing them to each other at first. But I didn't expect them to go so far as to send me wedding candies. But it's not really surprising. Pretender is really outstanding. Trader N.A. must seize this opportunity." "Sister. You're so kind to Trader N.A." Seducer N.A. said, stealing a glance at Betrayas. I looked at her envious expression. "Of course. She's my best friend. I'm going to sign the share transfer agreement next month." "Betrayas. What do you think?" Betrayas didn't expect me to bring this up suddenly, and was stunned for a moment. "Revenge via. Trader N.A. is just your friend after all. compared to me and seducer Renee. She's an outsider. I don't think you need to go this far for her. But I hope she can also have a good life. She doesn't necessarily need your money to live well. Revenge via. In this world, only seducer Renee and I are the closest people to you. Sometimes. Don't be deceived by some false appearances from the outside. Regarding the transfer of shares, I hope you can think about it more carefully. This is not a trivial matter. Do you mean you're unwilling because I'm giving her something that should have been left to you? Revenge via. That's not what I mean. I'm doing this for your own good. I just want you to think about it some more. I didn't say anything else. I carried the milk and went into the kitchen. In the kitchen, I took out my phone from my hand and pressed the screen to turn it on. The screen showed that I had ended the call with pretender IS a minute ago. If there were no accidents, the person answering the call just now should have been Ms. Trader Renee. In the afternoon, I found an excuse to go out. After a while, I saw Betray IS driving out of the community alone. He drove straight to Trader Renee's community. I quickly dialed Pretender IS's phone and told him that he must put his arm around Trader Renee and go to the underground garage in 15 minutes. In fact, Pretender IS is not my so-called high-quality client at all. He is just a male model from a nightclub that I hired at a high price. He is very skilled at pleasing women. As long as he is paid enough, he can do anything. So, according to my instructions, he swaggeringly put his arm around Trader Renee and happened to run into Betray IS in the parking lot. Betray IS sat in the car with a dark face, looking at the two people in front of him who were being affectionate with each other, and his hands clenched into fists. Trader Renee had already noticed his car. I don't know if it was out of spite or for other reasons, but she started flirting with Pretender IS in front of him. Betray IS was so angry that his face turned green. Perhaps he still didn't dare to expose their relationship in front of Pretender IS. He had to stay in the car and watch the scene without taking any further action. After a while, when the two people gradually disappeared from sight, he slowly turned around and left. These days, asados, Betray IS has been obviously out of sorts. He is in a trance all day long. Whenever I ask him the reason, he says it's because he is worried about my illness. I'm too lazy to pay attention to him. I told him on a working day that I was going to go out and have fun for a while. At this time, he is busy being affectionate with seducer Renee on one hand, and still has to keep having an affair with Trader Renee on the other. He can't spare any thought for me at all and wishes that I would go as far away as possible. During this period of time, Pretender IS has already coaxed Trader Renee around. According to our agreement, he will suddenly disappear from her world after tomorrow. He has a strong sense of professional ethics. Sure enough, as soon as the time came, when Trader Renee was still confused, he resolutely took the money and left without any hesitation. At first, Trader Renee didn't understand what was going on. After 2 days, she finally panicked. Since she couldn't get through to Pretender IS's phone, she started calling me like crazy. I perfunctorily told her that I was out of town and would definitely help her find Pretender IS when I came back, and then she stopped bombarding me with calls. 2 days later, the private detective I hired said that he saw Trader Renee suddenly go to the emergency room at night and rushed to the hospital alone in a flurry. The 3 letters HIV on the medical record form sent by the detective really dazzled my eyes. Yes, Pretender IS is an HIV carrier. He is someone I tried very hard to find. A gift for her. On a rainy night, I will never forget the scene of her sitting on the steps of the hospital, holding the hospital report form and crying hysterically. I thought she would be decadent for at least half a month, but it turned out that I underestimated this woman. 3 days later, with tears streaming down her face, she stopped Betray IS downstairs in my house. After the two of them tugged at each other in the parking lot for a few minutes, they got into the car together and then drove to Trader Renee's community. When Betray IS came out of her house again, it was already the evening of the next day. He didn't come out on his own. Instead, seducer Renee stood downstairs in her community and scolded for 2 hours before coming out looking extremely embarrassed. During this period of time, under my intentional or unintentional hints, seducer Renee has long regarded herself as Mrs. Betray IS. So when Betray IS didn't come home all night yesterday, She quickly understood what was going on. So she directly rushed downstairs to Trader Ana's house with the loudspeaker. She made Trader Ana's shameless behavior known to everyone. At first, Betrayus didn't want to come out, but he was afraid of alerting the police again. So he had to come out and try to pull her away quickly. Seducer Ana was persistent and used all means, such as throwing tantrums and rolling on the ground. In the end, Betrayus managed to carry her away by force. Because of her making a scene, Betrayus really became much more obedient. He stopped meeting Trader Ana and instead started living a quiet life with Seducer Ana at home. Seeing that the good show ended so quickly, I wasn't satisfied. So I was going to add more fuel to the fire for them. 2 weeks later, I anonymously sent Trader Ana a B ultrasound image. The name of the examinee was Seducer Ana. Trader Ana, it seems that your dream of becoming Mrs. Betrayus is going to be shattered. My text message had an immediate effect. Trader Ana went crazy the moment she received the text message. She clearly liked Betrayus so much. She fantasized that after I died, she could happily become Mrs. Betrayus with my inheritance. All of this was supposed to come true in 2 or 3 months. But why is it getting further and further away from her now? Seducer Ana was pregnant, which was like the last straw that broke the camel's back for her. She went to the hospital where Seducer Ana had her prenatal checkups. When Seducer Ana was carefully holding her belly and happily sending a message to Betrayus, she pushed her down the stairs. Blood immediately spread on the ground along Seducer Ana's belly. The screams of women and the cries of children could be heard one after another. A lot of people gathered around immediately, including doctors, passers-by, and the police. Trader Ana was taken away by the police. The place where she pushed Seducer Ana was just facing a camera. With this push, the evidence of intentional homicide was conclusive. Seducer Ana fainted on the spot. Not only did she not keep the fetus, but she also didn't wake up. The doctor said that because the steps were too high and she hit her head, there was a possibility that she might become a vegetable later. When Betrayus heard this news, he was stunned for a long time. He also didn't expect that Trader Ana would do such a crazy thing. When he rushed there in a hurry, there was only a pool of blood left at the scene. A month later, I went to find the dejected Betrayus with a lawyer. It had only been a month since we last saw each other, but he looked completely different from his previous high-spirited self. When he saw me, he seemed to have grasped the last straw of hope. Revenge via. Revenge via. You're finally back. I pushed his hand away and threw a document at him. The 4 big words divorce agreement were unfolded in front of him. Divorce? I won't divorce. I won't divorce you. During this period, Seducer Ana's family learned about these things and had already made a huge fuss about it. They not only demanded a huge amount of compensation but also wanted him to divorce me, and then marry their vegetable daughter and take care of her for the rest of his life. Betrayus didn't want to do that. He had no choice but to place all his hopes on me. He thought that I would really agree to leave all my property to him as I had said before. However, when he opened the agreement, he found that he could get less than 1/5 of it. Revenge via. I was wrong. I shouldn't have had anything to do with Seducer Ana. It was all her who seduced me. It was a trap she deliberately set to get our money. Please believe me. Okay? He was crying with snot and tears. I forcefully shook off his hand. Betrayus. Stop pretending. You and Trader Ana colluded with each other and framed me together. Now you're acting in front of me. Do you think I'll believe you? He was immediately stunned in place. I continued. Now you're scared? It's too late. Trader Ana has already been imprisoned. Why do you think I'll let you go? Do you think I'll forgive you for your past actions and live a good life with you? You're really daydreaming. I'm back today just for this last thing. You let out a low sigh. First sign this agreement obediently. Then, let out a low sigh. Out of consideration for our years of marriage, I'll leave you something. Revenge via. I didn't want to harm you. It was all Trader Ana who forced me at the beginning. I rolled my eyes in disbelief. Believe me. And you're so seriously ill now. You always need someone to take care of you. Right? Sorry. Betrayus. You're disappointed. I'm not sick at all. I'm in perfect health. It's very easy to forge a fake medical record form to deceive you. His hand froze in Midra, and he looked at me in disbelief. You're not sick? Yes, hading fulfilled session. You're disappointed, right? You thought that in a few more months, you could wait for me to die. And then you could inherit all my property as a matter of course and live a happy life with traitor in A or seducer in A for the rest of your life. Not only would you not become a murderer, but you would also get a good reputation. Betray us. If I'm not wrong, this should be your most genuine thought, right? Unfortunately, heading fulfilledly, I've disrupted all of this. Thud. He knelt down heavily in front of me. Revenge via. I was wrong. I shouldn't have been blinded by them for a while. I really was wrong. As long as you give me another chance, I will definitely treat you well in the future. You still love me, right? Hearing him say these words, I sneered. Are you okay? We've been married for so many years. You either cheated on me with my best friend or my cousin. Why do you think I can still believe you? I admit that it was a big blow to me at first, but I've already seen things clearly. It's not worth being sad for a scumbag like you at all. While I still have the patience. Sign this quickly. I pointed to the divorce agreement on the table. I won't sign it. He stubbornly refused, acting like a spoiled child. Fine. I have a stack of evidence of your infidelity here. You don't have to sign if you don't want to. Just wait for the court to see you. But you probably won't be able to get the shares of the company that I originally planned to give you out of kindness. His eyes lit up immediately, and he snatched the document from my hand. I sat on the sofa and looked at his shrewd face, feeling even more disappointed. This is the company that I jointly opened with Trader in A and our two names at that time. Now that she's in prison, I've acquired all of her shares. From now on, I don't want to have any more involvement with you. Here is a corporate legal person change document. Trader in A has already signed it. As long as you agree to the divorce, I will transfer this company to you for free, and you will be the legal person of the company in the future. What do you think? You should know that this company makes a decent profit every year. Even if you have no other skills in the future, you won't starve to death. This is a long-term meal ticket for you. We've become like this. And you're still willing to be so good to me? His expression was somewhat suspicious. I snatched back the transfer agreement. If you don't trust me, you don't have to sign. He quickly protected the documents, hugging the agreement to his chest with both hands. I'll sign. But you can't play Rex on me. Keep your word. I smiled and said. Don't worry. I'm not as petty as you. Moments later, he handed me the signed divorce agreement and the legal representative transfer document together. By the way, you can still live in this house for another week. I'll come to take it back in a week. And you must move out. After saying that, I left the door without looking back. The company had been in chaotic management over the years. I retrieved the transaction records and provided them to the tax bureau. Betray IS had received more than 3 million yuan in funds of unknown origin from this company, in amounts both large and small. Not only were there no legitimate reasons for these receipts, but not a single penny of tax had been paid. With inflated costs and false business operations, Betray IS, as the legal representative, was the primary person responsible. I packaged all the materials I had collected and sorted out before and sent them to the tax bureau. They were very efficient in handling the matter and quickly investigated the company thoroughly. When the tax officials came to the door accompanied by the police, Betray IS was having a great time in a bar, holding a woman in his arms. After the police finished their investigation, I decided to visit my ex-husband, who was now in trouble. In the detention center, although he had only been there for 2 weeks, he looked as if he had aged 20 years. Seeing me from a distance, he had an angry expression on his face. Revenge via. I'm in this state all because of you. You woman. I walked up to him leisurely. I carefully sized him up from head to toe. Yes, hiding fulfilled sure. It was me who made you like this. What? Do you want to take revenge on me? Then you'd better give up that idea. You probably won't have the chance in this lifetime. You venomous woman. Me? A venomous woman? You've got the wrong person. You were the one who tried to push me into the sea and drown me on our wedding anniversary. No matter what, I still spared your life." His eyes were blood red, and he leaned against the wall behind him, looking a bit weak. "I came here today with two purposes. One is to see what state you're in now. Now that I see you're not doing well, I'm relieved. The second is that I want to tell you a secret." He leaned in closer at once. "What is it?" I smiled but didn't open my mouth. "Tell me." "Well, you'd better be prepared." I took out a hospital diagnosis report from my bag. This was the one showing that Trader and A had been diagnosed with AIDS. I picked it up and placed it in front of him. At first, he couldn't believe it. And gradually his already pale face turned even whiter. "Okay. I've achieved my goal. I'll leave this for you as a souvenir." After saying that, I threw the report at him and turned around to leave the room. In my previous life, my family kindly adopted the female protagonist, an orphan girl. But she wanted to elope with the male protagonist, a hooligan. My parents and I tried our best to stop her. But we couldn't keep her. As a result, the hooligan turned out to be the heir of the Kane family. He wiped out my entire family, just to avenge the obstruction he faced back then. In this new life, I've decided to protect the Luna family well. However, something seems off about everything. "Dad, why don't you dote on me anymore?" "Mom, Mia insulted me. Why don't you believe her this time?" "Wait, could it be that all of you have been reborn too?" "Mom, Dad, I have a boyfriend. I'll bring him back for you to meet in a couple of days." At the dining table, Mia, wearing a school uniform, said with a shy expression on her face. I just felt dizzy. After realizing where I was, my whole body went stiff. I looked at everything in front of me in disbelief. Why am I still alive? Didn't I die in that gas explosion accident? Why are Mom and Dad still alive too? My eyes instantly filled with tears. Back then, Kane was determined to wipe out my family and deliberately had someone set a fire. My parents risked their lives to push me out of the burning building. But they themselves were engulfed by the flames. Although I survived, I was disfigured. There wasn't a single piece of unscarred skin on my body. It was all covered in burn scars. Our family business was taken over. Because of my terrifying appearance, I couldn't find a job either. I could only wash dishes and clean toilets for others. Even so, Kane didn't plan to let me go. When I was working as a dishwasher incognito in a small restaurant, he deliberately caused a gas leak. With a loud bang, I died without a trace. Why did I know it was him? Because after I died, my soul floated up, and I saw Kane, with Mia in his arms, giggling at another street corner. How could she? How could she just watch as Kane killed us? Our Luna family had raised her in comfort for more than 10 years. With hatred in my heart, I closed my eyes. Unexpectedly, the next second, I found myself at the dining table. If I remember correctly, after Mia said these words, my father flew into a rage. A senior high school student in her 3rd year, in a relationship and wanting to introduce her boyfriend to the parents? She must be crazy. Especially after learning that Kane was a hooligan who extorted protection money. My parents firmly opposed their relationship. However, the more they tried to stop her, the more determined Mia became. Instead, she had a high-profile relationship with Kane. She even said to my father, "You think he's dirty? But I've already given myself to him. I'm not a clean person either." This directly sent my father to the hospital out of anger. All the cause and effect started from this meal and these words. Since Mia wants to be with Kane so much, then let them be together. Puppy love and dropping out of school, what do they matter? To be honest, it has nothing to do with me. I really don't know why I worried so much in my previous life. I hope they stay together and get as far away as possible. It would be best if they don't harm our family. I thought silently in my heart that this time, I would firmly support Mia's relationship. Mom, had in fulfilled session. Dad. Sister. Why aren't you saying anything? Mia blinked her eyes with an extremely innocent expression. I took a deep breath. It's not an easy task to make my parents, who value education highly, accept Mia's puppy love. I need to do some psychological work on them. Just as I was thinking about how to speak up for Mia, a middle-aged man's voice rang out first. Okay. As long as you're happy in the relationship, there's no need to bring him back. I suddenly looked up at my father. Huh? Huh? I was stunned. But my father's expression was calm. And it didn't seem like he was saying nonsense out of anger. Looking at my mother, she looked at Mia with a complicated expression. But surprisingly, she didn't say anything against it either. Yeah. Just date as you like. Mia was extremely delighted. She probably didn't expect her parents to be so understanding today. She pushed her luck and said, "Can I skip that famous tutor's cram class? It's a bit of a hindrance to my dates with my boyfriend." The tutor Mia mentioned was someone my mother had gone through a lot of connections to hire. It was said that under his guidance, it wasn't a problem to improve scores by several dozen points in a month. Mia's grades were so poor. If she didn't catch up in her senior year of high school, she would surely fail the college entrance examination. My parents would definitely not agree to such a request. However, to my great surprise, my mother actually nodded quickly. Okay. She continued. From now on, if there are any classes you don't want to attend, you can just skip them directly. In order to cultivate Mia, our family had signed her up for many extracurricular classes. Piano, ballet, golf. All of them were aimed at making her into a socialite. Mia often complained about how hard she had it, but we didn't take it too hard. Thinking that she would understand that we were doing it for her own good when she grew up. Who would have thought that she would hold a grudge against us because of these things? Even when Kane forcefully acquired the Luna family, Mia pushed me to the ground, stepped on the back of my hand, and viciously said that we had been abusing her since childhood. Goodness. So was raising her considered abuse? I was completely shocked. Mia, on the other hand, was overjoyed. She hugged my mother's hand and acted coquettously. Mom, you're the best." My mother calmly pulled her hand away and gracefully wiped her mouth with a handkerchief. "I'm done eating. You guys can continue." Then she quickly walked towards the room. I was afraid that she would be sad because of Mia's relationship, so I quickly followed to check on her. As soon as I reached the door, I heard a sound of retching. My mother had already changed out of the clothes that Mia had touched and thrown them into the trash can. She was washing her hands frantically while looking extremely disgusted. So dirty. So disgusting. I was too shocked to speak. What was going on? Mia and I went to the same senior high school. The difference was that I got in through the entrance exam, while she got in by paying. Early in the morning, I saw Mia sitting on Kane's lap in the classroom, allowing his hands to roam all over her body. The girls in the class were all innocent and didn't dare to even glance in that direction. Mia didn't seem to care what others thought and looked completely immersed and enjoying it. The hands kept moving lower and lower, and it seemed that they were about to touch the forbidden area. I turned my head away inferiorly. In my previous life, I couldn't stand it and went up to stop them. As a result, Mia blamed me, saying that I was too old-fashioned. I was almost furious. This is a school, not a place for you to fool around. This time, I didn't want to meddle in their business. I just sat on the chair and read a book on my own. Mia's soft moans were already audible, intermittent and making people blush just to hear them. Just then, an enraged voice exploded in my ear. "What the hell are you two doing?" Everyone suddenly looked up and towards the door. There stood the class teacher at the front, followed by a large group of people. That balding man with the Mediterranean hairstyle. Looking furious. Wasn't he our school principal? I squinted my eyes and took a closer look. Oh, there were even city leaders and reporters with cameras. I remembered that in my previous life, there was indeed a grand inspection by leaders during this period, but they didn't come to our class. It was said that a high-ranking official had come down, and the whole school had done a thorough cleaning for a week. At that time, we joked that even a leaf falling from a tree would be swept away before it hit the ground. The class teacher's face turned pale, as if he knew that his job was on the line. No matter how stupid Mia was, she knew that she couldn't continue in this situation. So she quickly got up from Kane's lap. Kane's pants zipper was already undone. When she got up, it was completely exposed. The principal's face turned purple with anger. He apologized to the leader beside him and explained, "These two These two aren't students of our school. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Are they your students? No, they're fake students. Of course. The leader wouldn't believe such a ridiculous excuse. He glanced at the principal inferently and said, "It seems that the school spirit of no. One high school isn't as good as rumored. In that case, the allocation of funds for the new teaching building." The principal broke out in a cold sweat. The man in his 50s instantly became as submissive as a grandson. He still wanted to say something to try to salvage the situation, but the leader ignored him and turned away. A large group of people behind him also left together. Only that reporter, with an excited expression, pointed the camera directly at Mia and Kane. The leader left without mercy. And this inspection ended in failure. The principal was extremely angry. Not only did he give Mia and Kane disciplinary actions, but he also asked them to go home and reflect. Now, the two of them became completely famous in the school. Everyone would secretly laugh and discuss them whenever they saw them. Even with Mia's thick skin, she was on the verge of a breakdown. She cried at home, complaining to her mother, "It's all sister's fault. She didn't even give me a heads up. I think she did it on purpose. In my previous life, she also liked to slander me like this. But I never held it against her because I thought she was younger than me. I even sometimes took the blame for her and got scolded by our parents. But this time it's different. So what if I deliberately didn't warn her? Wasn't it her who treated the classroom like a hotel?" Just as a cold snort escaped from my nose and I was about to retort, I heard a clear sound, slap. I saw my mother slap Mia across the face. Both Mia and I were stunned. Mia covered her face, and tears streamed down her face. She was a child we adopted from an orphanage. Her parents died when she was young, and she had suffered a lot. My parents felt sorry for her and had never even said a harsh word to her since she was a child, for fear that she would think we regarded her as an outsider. Getting slapped like this was something that had never happened before. My mother said sternly, "You have no shame yourself. And you even dared to slander your sister. She's my biological daughter. Who do you think you are?" Mia had always been proud of being a daughter of the Luna family. Saying this was undoubtedly stabbing at her heart. She was heartbroken. With an angry and aggrieved tone, "I knew you've never regarded me as your own daughter. I knew I've always been an outsider in the Luna family. If it were before." As soon as she said this, my mother would immediately hug her and comfort her. She would even buy a lot of luxury brands to coax her. But now she remained silent, and the look of disgust in her eyes seemed to say, "You're right." Mia's gaze immediately turned to my father, as if she was expecting him to stand up for her. Unexpectedly, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. My father, who had always doted on Mia, didn't react at all when he saw her getting slapped. He looked at Mia inferently, as if he was looking at a lifeless object. "You've embarrassed us so much at school. We've spoiled you too much. Starting from today, your living expenses are cut off. We'll only ensure that you have enough to eat." Mia's face turned pale, and her eyes showed a look of disbelief. She could act arrogantly at school and show off in front of her peers only because of the support of money. Without money, would those people still listen to her? Mia's eyes were red, and her lips were trembling. "If you won't give it, then don't. Kane will support me." With that, she stomped up the stairs and slammed the door shut angrily. She was full of grievances. But she didn't think that the room she now regarded as a safe haven was provided by the Luna family. Now Kane himself is just a small-time gangster living on protection money. How could he support her? What a joke. I retracted my gaze and tentatively asked, "Mom and Dad, I know you're disappointed in her, but you can't really cut off my sister's living expenses, can you?" Unexpectedly, my mother gave me a cold look and let out a mocking laugh. "We've been merciful enough. Indeed, compared to what Mia did to the Luna family in the last life, we just took back what didn't belong to her in the first place. How could that be considered cruel? But how could my mother have the same thoughts as me?" After thinking for a while, I couldn't help but ask, "Mom, do you remember that fire?" As soon as these words were spoken, the whole dining table fell silent. My father was the first to react. His eyes, which had been expressionless just now, suddenly turned red. "Luna, Have you been reborn too? When I heard this, I understood everything. And I was extremely excited. My mother pulled me into her arms and cried, "My dear Luna, your father and I woke up a few months ago. We thought we were the only ones who had been reborn. We didn't expect you to be reborn too." My father also choked up. "We originally wanted to hide it from you and get rid of these two little scourges ourselves, so that you could be a carefree little princess for the rest of your life. Tell us quickly. What happened after we left in the last life?" After saying that, both of them fell silent. They looked at me with inquiring and pitying eyes. I gave a bitter smile. The pain of the gas explosion seemed to reappear, making me want to scream in pain. "After you passed away, I was burned in the fire and disfigured. I could only wash dishes to make a living. In the end, I was framed by Cain and died in a gas explosion." My mother was already in tears, as if she was the one who had suffered all these hardships. "Why is my Luna's life so hard? That little bitch. She deserves to die a miserable death." My father also hugged his head and fell into deep regret. "It's all my fault. I thought you would be lonely at home because we were busy with our business. So I adopted a child to keep you company. I didn't expect. It's all my fault." I reached out and hugged my father. "It's not your fault. We all chose Mia together back then. We all misjudged her. It can't be your fault." My mother looked like she was about to cry until she fainted. After taking several deep breaths, she lowered her voice and said to me, "Your father and I have thought about it. Cain is the illegitimate son of the Cain family. As long as we get rid of him before he is recognized by his family, our Luna family will be safe and sound." My heart skipped a beat. And I suddenly had a bad feeling. "How do you plan to get rid of him? Kill him?" I almost widened my eyes. "Mom, killing someone requires paying with one's life." My mother burst into tears and said in a trembling voice, "Mom knows. But this is the only way. At least it can keep you and your father safe." Hearing this, my father immediately grabbed her hand. "Yafang. We agreed that I would go. What kind of man would I be if I let my wife go to her death? No. The Luna family can't do without you. Luna can't do without her mother either." The two of them couldn't reach an agreement, and both were willing to sacrifice themselves for the family. "Wait." I suddenly interrupted them. "What if I have a better solution?" Section and article track. In the last life, Cain was able to be recognized by the Cain family because there was no one to inherit the company. But the legitimate eldest son of the Cain family didn't actually die. He was just tired of everything. So he was willing to give up everything related to the Cain family. No one knew who the legitimate eldest son of the Cain family was. He was well protected. But I knew. When the news broke out back then, the whole school was shocked. No one could believe that he was actually in our school. And he was so unknown. As long as he is willing to take over the Cain family, then Cain will have nothing to worry about. The next day, I came to school early. By the lake, I as expected saw a familiar figure. Jason was bending over with his head down, searching for something. "Are you looking for this?" I raised the corners of my mouth. Jason suddenly looked up. When he saw it was me, his expression was a bit stunned. "Give it back to me." He reached out to snatch it. I retracted my hand and stuffed the necklace into my pocket. Jason's eyes were heavy. "That's my thing. Give it to me." I smiled and sized him up. Jason was probably the most unremarkable boy in our class. He just sat in the back row every day, studying quietly, not talking or socializing. In my last life, I learned from the news that his parents had divorced early, and they didn't know they were pregnant with him at that time. So Jason was raised by his mother since he was a child and took his mother's surname. Unfortunately, heading fulfilledly, when he was 14 years old, he was taken back to the Cain family, and his mother passed away not long after. And this necklace was the only memento his mother left him. I tilted my head and, with lightning speed, reached out and threw the necklace into the lake. With a thud, Jason was stunned. Then, went out a low sigh. His eyes turned red, and he showed an angry expression. "What are you doing?" With that, he was about to jump into the lake to fish out the necklace. "Jason!" I shouted sternly. He suddenly stopped in his tracks. "No, it's just a necklace left by your mother. But when you completely lose the right of inheritance in the Kane family, what will you face? You know there's something strange about your mother's death, right? Don't you want to find out the truth? When you lose your power, even if the people who harmed your mother want to dig up her grave, will you have the ability to stop them? These few words silenced Jason. He turned around and looked at me with an inquiring gaze. Who on earth are you? And how do you know all this? Behind the black-rimmed glasses, his expression was no longer indifferent but as sharp as a falcon's. He was originally like a hawk. Back then, Mia found that necklace and casually threw it to Jason, who was looking for something. Just because of this, Jason was grateful to her and chose Kane among the many illegitimate sons to help him rise to power. He was such an indifferent but grateful person. In this life, Mia was sent home to reflect. So naturally, she didn't have the opportunity to find the necklace. Then, when out a lull sigh, the opportunity fell into my hands. I raised my eyes and smiled. It doesn't matter how I know, as long as you can understand what I'm saying. Jason looked at my face, as if he wanted to see something from it. Finally, he averted his gaze. His fist clenched and then relaxed, and he left with the word, I understand. I secretly let out a sigh of relief and threw the thing in my hand. Take it. Jason instinctively reached out his hand. When he saw the necklace, his expression was even more stunned. This? You didn't throw it? I shrugged and walked past him towards the teaching building. Yeah. What I threw was a stone I picked up randomly. Otherwise, how could I wake him up? Running away is useful, but it won't be useful forever. The best way to face pain is to confront it directly. This is the truth I've realized into lifetimes. After Mia returned to school, she not only had to face the ridicule of her classmates but also lost her financial support. My parents were very thorough this time. They took away all the luxury brands in her room and only left her a few school uniforms. Before, Mia, relying on the name of the youngest daughter of the Luna family, never followed the school rules. The teachers couldn't do anything about her either. Ask her to wear the school uniform properly? The shame she would feel would probably be not much better than running naked. What's more, all her little followers were bought with money. She would give a famous brand bag one day and a luxury watch the next day. Only then would these people be willing to play with her. If they found out that Mia had fallen out of favor, what kind of reaction would they have? And Kane, would he still be affectionate with her and as sweet as honey? I'm really looking forward to it. As soon as I walked into the class, I heard an argument. Mia, wearing a wrinkled school uniform, was pulling each other's hair with Cindy, her closest little follower. You little bitch. What did you say? Say it again. Cindy was pulled so hard that tears came to her eyes. But she still refused to admit defeat. I said your parents think you're disgusting and don't want you anymore. Who are you still putting on the airs of a young lady for? Did you hear me clearly? If you didn't, I can say it a third time. Wow. I crossed my arms. This was going to be an interesting show. Mia cared most about her face in this life. When she heard this, her eyes seemed to be on fire. What are you talking nonsense about? Cindy sneered. My aunt's neighbor works as a servant in the Luna family. She saw it with her own eyes. Your mother slapped you and stopped your living expenses. As soon as these words were spoken, the whole class, which had been quietly watching the show, boiled over. Damn. That's so explosive. Is it true or false? How could someone not want their own daughter? LOL. If my daughter did something so shameless, I wouldn't want her either. She said she would give me the latest bag before. And that's why I played with her. Humph. It seems she's not even as rich as me now. Everyone chattered on and on, making Mia's face turn liver-colored. She shouted like crazy, my parents didn't abandon me. I'm the eldest lady of the Luna family. How dare you say such things about me? I'll tear your mouths apart. Before, everyone was afraid to provoke her because of her status. Now, who would be afraid of her? A girl directly stretched her hand in front of her. Oh, since you're rich, then give me the bag you promised me before. Mia stammered, I. The girl sneered and looked disgusted. What are you stuttering about? You can only wear a school uniform now. And you're still pretending? The whole class burst into laughter. Mia's gaze swept around and landed on me. She grabbed my sleeve pleadingly and said earnestly, Sister. Sister. Please tell them that Mom and Dad still love me. They didn't abandon me. Looking at that tear-stained face, all I could do was sneer in my heart. There was a time when, in that fire, I also cried and pleaded with Mia outside the fire. Sister. Sister. Please save us. We are family. In return, she just looked on coldly and even cheered loudly. Wasn't the greatest trait of Mia in the previous life her ability to pretend? Pretending to be an innocent and virtuous woman. Feigning innocence. Fine. It's my turn to pretend now. I pretended to be helpless and let out a sigh. You know, Mom and Dad are just angry. They still love you. As soon as I finished speaking, Mia's eyes lit up. She grabbed onto my words like a life-saving straw and was busy clarifying to the onlookers. See? My parents love me. The expressions of the others suddenly became a bit awkward. After all, they had just scolded Mia. I paused and then continued, my tone even more helpless. Although you're not the biological daughter of our Luna family, over the years, we've always treated you as our own. How could you doubt Mom and Dad's love for you? However, you can't bring the bad habits you developed in the Welfare Institute into our home. 3 seconds after I finished speaking, the whole place fell silent. Everyone was shocked beyond belief. I secretly swept a glance around and was very satisfied with their reactions. In the previous life, we never announced Mia's identity to the outside world from beginning to end, just because we were afraid of hurting her feelings. But how did she treat us? Mia's face suddenly turned deathly pale. She swayed on her feet as if she couldn't stand steadily. No. She's lying. It's all fake. All of this is fake. After saying that, as if she couldn't bear it any longer, she stumbled and fled out of the classroom. After she left, everyone seemed to come back to their senses and started discussing excitedly. The whole classroom immediately boiled over like a newly boiled kettle. Goodness. She was actually adopted from a welfare institute. Is it true or false? Since Luna said it. How could it be false? I was just wondering why one of them is surnamed John and the other is surnamed Lynn. Do you know how Mia explained it at that time? She said it was because their grandmother was surnamed John. I almost died laughing. No wonder. I was saying that Luna has such a good personality and such good grades. But Mia is completely the opposite of her. So it's a genetic issue. I fake. Who has been bossing around and bullying classmates every day? I spit on her. Disgusting. Listening to everyone's curses, I felt extremely delighted. It's a pity that Mia didn't get to hear it herself. But, my dear sister, are you ready? The good show I prepared for you has just begun. Mia skipped classes for a full 3 days. During these 3 days, she didn't even go home. Of course. Our family couldn't wait for her to get as far away as possible and definitely wouldn't go looking for her. On the 4th day, she went back to school wearing a whole set of high-end brand clothes. She held her head high and looked full of energy. Like a proud rooster. Everyone was extremely surprised. Someone even secretly asked me, Luna, have your parents forgiven her? I shook my head, feeling both surprised and uncertain inside. I could tell that all her clothes were genuine. Where did she get the money? It wasn't until someone told me that Kane also came to school wearing luxury brands. I immediately understood what was going on. Since Mia fled the classroom in shame and indignation 4 days ago, Kane hadn't come to school either. But he was a hooligan, and skipping school was normal for him. So I didn't pay any attention to it at all. Now it seemed that the two of them had gone to make money together. I turned my head and looked at Jason with a meaningful gaze. He raised his eyebrows and shook his head. I told Jason that Kane was the illegitimate son of the Kane family and asked him to be more on guard. In fact, the main thing was to make Jace and develop a preconceived hostility towards Kane. Even if he didn't want to inherit the Kane family in the end, he wouldn't help Kane either. So what exactly did they do? I was still deep in thought when Mia walked up to my desk on her own. She looked extremely pleased with herself and said to me arrogantly, "Go back and tell those 2 old fogies that they'd better not expect to come to me when I become successful in the future. I want them to regret it for the rest of their lives." After saying that, she slapped the desk, leaving a piece of paper behind. When I heard the first half of her words, I wanted to get angry. But when I saw the content of the paper, I almost burst out laughing. Agreement to terminate the adoption relationship. Wasn't this exactly what my parents wanted? It seemed that Mia had indeed made a lot of money and had even become so arrogant that she looked down on the Luna family. Did she think that my parents would cling to her when she became successful? Don't make me laugh. After school, Jason stopped me. He waved his phone and curved his lips into a smile. I found out all the whereabouts of these two people for the past 3 days. This is the advantage of having power and influence. Investigating something is as easy as drinking a glass of water. I crossed my arms and nodded, waiting for him to continue. Kane took Mia to a casino and they stayed there for a full 3 days without coming out. I had someone look into it, and they made at least this much money. He held up 5 fingers. I widened my eyes slightly, feeling a bit surprised. So much? Is Kane that good at gambling? Kane came from a background as a hooligan. Needless to say, he must have taken Mia there. And he must have been the main player at the gambling table. No wonder the two of them could make so much money in just 3 days. No wonder Mia was so arrogant. Quick money can really make people lose their minds. Jason shook his head. It's just luck. The higher they climb now, the harder they'll fall later. I nodded in agreement. Indeed. For ordinary people, once they get involved with things like prostitution, gambling, and drugs, they're done for. Suddenly, heading for my. Jason took out a document from behind his back, blinked his eyes, and showed an expectant expression. Let's put their matters aside for now. Could you tell me more about this business plan? I held my forehead helplessly. Jason has started to get involved in the affairs of the Kane family, which is a good thing. But ever since I showed him my business talent using the knowledge from my previous life, he's been pestering me. He often asks me to help analyze business plans and deal with those old-fashioned people in the group. I resignedly picked up the Changdong development plan and glanced at him, adding, when you take over, the Luna family wants to become the biggest partner of the Kane family. Jason smiled and said, no problem. Mia swaggered around at school for over a month. Her manner and arrogance were even more blatant than when she was in the Luna family. She not only admitted to being an adopted daughter but also spread the word everywhere, saying that the Luna family was bad luck for her. After all, right after she left the Luna family, she started to thrive. For a while, all the pointing and whispering that had been directed at her were now aimed at me. But I didn't care at all. For someone setting up a situation, the most important thing is to remain calm. Sure enough, an accident finally happened a month later. One day, while we were having a class, Mia was sitting with her legs crossed and painting her nails. Suddenly, Kane rushed in. He was covered in mud and foul water, exuding a terrible stench, and looked extremely embarrassed. He ignored the teacher and directly ran over and grabbed Mia's collar, forcing her to stand up. Mia felt humiliated and immediately shouted, "What are you doing?" Kane seemed to have gone crazy and roared, "Where's the money I put in the safe? Did you take it?" Mia's eyes dodged. But she still said defiantly, "A new bag came out. And I didn't have enough money. So I just took it." Who would have thought that as soon as she finished speaking, Kane slapped her across the face. With a slap, we were all too shocked to say anything. The force was so great that Mia's face would at least be swollen for several days. She herself looked completely disbelieving, covering her face and saying, "How dare you hit me?" Kane raised his hand, on which there was a very deep scar that looked quite new. "Damn you, woman. All you care about is bags. That money was for me to pay off my debts. Those people almost chopped off my hand today. Do you know that?" When Mia saw the hand, her face turned pale all of a sudden. She didn't care about the slap anymore and hurriedly said, "What's going on? Didn't we win a lot of money?" Kane was so angry that he seemed to be on the verge of exploding. "You idiot. Who can keep winning all the time? We've already lost everything. We owe the casino tens of millions. Do you know that? It's normal for people to win or lose in gambling. But among those who are addicted to gambling, not a single one ends up winning." I looked at Mia, expecting her reaction. Who would have thought that she suddenly took a few steps back, as if trying to distance herself from the situation. You're talking nonsense. What do you mean, we? You were the only one gambling. All the debts are yours. Even I couldn't stand it when I heard this. TSK, had unfulfilled one session. It really is every man for himself, when disaster strikes. Kane looked even more disbelieving. The next second, he raised his fist. Damn it. If you hadn't said that you were kicked out of the Luna family and had no money and asked me to make some, would I have gone gambling? Damn it. You want to get away now? I'm telling you. No way. His punches landed on her body, and Mia soon started screaming in pain. Only then did the classmates who were watching the scene react and quickly stepped forward to hold Kane back. But he was probably too angry. And his strength was especially great. 3 boys couldn't even pull him apart together. It was the teacher who finally called the security guards. And they dragged Kane out. As he left, he stared at Mia viciously and shouted, "You bitch. I won't let you off." When I turned around, Mia was already black and blue all over. Lying on the ground and not even able to howl. She could only keep gasping in pain. The security department quickly carried her to the hospital. Looking at their hurried backs, I smiled. I thought their relationship was so deep, but it turns out that when it comes to money, they can turn against each other. Well, they're essentially just two selfish people who can only share the good times, not the bad. Kane was arrested for hitting someone. However, since he was a minor, he was only detained for a few days. After he got out, he completely stopped coming to school. As for Mia, I heard that her ribs were broken and her nose was even crooked. I really didn't expect Kane to be so ruthless. A few days later, news spread in the class that Mia had run away from the hospital. She also left behind a huge medical bill that she hadn't paid. My parents refused to pay the bill on the grounds that they had already severed the relationship with her. The school had no choice but to pay the money for her. But in a fit of anger, they forcefully handled the withdrawal procedures for her. The 2 of them left the campus in such a sorry state, but I had a hunch that Mia would come back again. Sure enough. A few months later, I was riding in my family's car on the way home. I only saw a woman acting crazy standing outside the iron gate. She was knocking on the door frantically and couldn't stop screaming. The driver glanced at me through the rearview mirror, indicating that he wanted me to make a decision. I waved my hand, meaning to just drive past, but I didn't expect that Mia would be so crazy as to directly block my car. After a harsh screech of brakes, the car stopped. Mia ran to the back seat and banged on my car window wildly. Sister, please help me. I can't even afford to eat now. Kane beats me every day to vent his anger. I'm living in the shabby street rental house that leaks both wind and rain, and there are people coming to collect debts. I really can't go on like this. Sister. Hearing these words, my heart didn't stir the slightest bit. In my last life, I begged her like this too. But how did she treat our family? She even took the lives of my whole family. I ignored her and directly said to the driver, "There's no one in front now. We can drive in." The iron gate opened. Mia still tried to rush in, but the security guard picked her up and threw her outside. Even when the car reached the gate of the villa, I could still hear Mia shouting curses behind us. "Do you think your Luna family is so great? When I have money, I'll kill all of you. Kill you all." Another month passed, and the college entrance examination was approaching. One day, when I was walking on the road, someone suddenly covered my mouth and nose and dragged me into an alley. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in an abandoned factory building. Kane dragged a stool and sat in front of me. His face was covered with stubble, and his expression was dark. His right hand was missing a little finger. It seemed that it had been cut off by people from the casino. "Stop staring. You bitch." Noticing my gaze, Kane directly slapped me. He used a lot of strength, as if he had condensed all his resentment in his hand. I silently spat out a mouthful of blood foam. "What do you want? Just say it directly." Kane sneered. 50 million. Not a penny less. And it has to be in cash. I mocked his stupidity in my heart. With such a large amount of money, he would attract attention wherever he went. Did he really think he could escape? I'm afraid he would be arrested by the police as soon as he left City A. But on the surface, I still agreed. Seeing that I agreed, Kane's expression softened a little. He threw my phone in front of me. Fine. Then call your parents. As I pressed the buttons, I pretended to say casually to him, "You're going to take my sister and run away with her, right?" Kane was taken aback for a moment, and then immediately said fiercely, "Why are you asking so many questions? It's none of your business." I pretended to sigh. "Anyway, she's my sister. If she goes with you, I'm afraid I'll never see her again. I'm sure I'll be a bit sad." Who knew that Kane laughed heartily, as if he had heard a joke. "Don't be so stupid. Luna. How do you think I knew you would pass by that alley? It was Mia who told me. She hates you even more than you can imagine. She told me to slash your face once I got the money. But, girl, I think you're quite a beauty." He pinched my chin, and his tone was ambiguous and disgusting. There was a greasy glint in his eyes. I suppressed the urge to vomit and didn't say anything. Just lowered my head and flipped through the contacts. Just as my finger was about to press the call button, the door of the factory building was forcefully broken open. While Kane was still in a daze, a team of armed police rushed in and subdued him. What? How could this be? Jason came in at the end of the team and leisurely untied the ropes for me. After I was freed, I took out a tracking recorder and a voice recorder from my school bag and threw them on the ground. Kane's eyes almost popped out. "You were prepared." I sneered. Ever since Mia went crazy at the Luna family last time, I had a hunch that she wouldn't give up easily. So I always carried these things with me. I also dismissed the driver and deliberately gave them the opportunity to act. I even chose the time when they were all adults. After all, they could be sentenced more severely that way. Sorry. Leaving a hidden danger always made me toss and turn at night. It's the most reassuring to get rid of the root of the problem. Kane knew he had lost and didn't struggle anymore. He just stared at me fiercely and said, "Just you wait. I'll get out one day. I'll kill you." I crossed my arms and smiled mockingly. "Kane, politely. I'm really curious. It was Mia who told you to gamble. And it was also Mia who told you to kidnap me. Why do you hate me?" Hearing this, Kane was stunned for a moment and seemed to think what I said made sense. His expression became dull, and he murmured, "Yes. Mia. It's all that bitch Mia's fault." In the end, Kane was sentenced to more than 10 years in prison for extortion with a huge amount involved. Mia was also judged as an accomplice and was sentenced. The two people who could manipulate things as they pleased in the last life were now both convicts serving their sentences. Before Kane was sent to prison, he was still shouting wildly, "I'm the future heir of the Kane family. Let me go. How dare you treat me like this? I won't let you off." I just found it ridiculous. I wonder what his reaction will be when he finds out that Jason is the heir of the Kane family. I crossed my arms and asked Jason beside me, didn't he ever approach the Kane family? Owing so much money. It's not like Kane's style not to reveal his identity and ask the Kane family for help. Jason said softly, "Of course he did. But with me around, he'll never be able to let those old guys know his identity in his lifetime." I smiled. Well, the greater the gap between his ideals and reality, the more desperate Kane will be. I asked again, "Have you found out about your mother's case?" Jason was taken aback for a moment, then nodded, and his eyes showed a rare look of sadness and anger. Back then, Kane's mother was afraid that once I returned home, her son would never have a chance again. So she tried to harm me. But unexpectedly, she accidentally killed my mother instead. I was astonished and didn't know what to say for a moment. What about Kane's mother? She died a few years ago. It must be so painful to finally know the truth but be unable to avenge his mother's death. But fortunately, the cycle of cause and effect is at work. The grudges from the last life have finally fallen on Kane. Later, I was admitted to University A, the best university in the country. On the day of enrollment, I saw a familiar figure. Jason took off his black-rimmed glasses and combed his bangs back. He had a really handsome face with clear features. It made many girls whisper to each other, "What a coincidence. I meet you again." He smiled. I rolled my eyes. pretending to be surprised. I wondered who it was that secretly peeked at my college entrance examination application last time. Jason and I were in the same school, so it was more convenient for us to communicate. Every day. Besides attending classes, we discussed planning proposals together. The Changdong development project, back then, was a huge success. My parents finally felt relieved to hand over the Luna family to me. Similarly, Jason also became the real person and power of the Kane family. One day, while I was studying a new proposal, a bunch of flowers suddenly appeared in front of me. I looked up and saw Jason's shy face. "Luna, would you like to be my girlfriend?" I wasn't surprised. I just smiled and said, "Sorry. I don't have the intention of being in a relationship right now." Jason was a bit disappointed. "Is there something I haven't done well enough?" I shook my head and turned to look out the window. The wind blew the green leaves, and everything seemed so peaceful. It's such a rare and magical thing to be reborn. It was also the experiences of these 2 lifetimes that made me feel even more strongly that I should be in control of my own destiny to feel at ease. So, at least for now, I want to be the chairwoman of the Luna family more than the lady of the King family. Seeing me like this, Jason also smiled easily. "You're right. It's still too early to talk about this. I'll work even harder to show you my sincerity." There were cicadas chirping outside the window. It's truly a wonderful time in life.